Hershey is known for its chocolate, but what about their theme park? With a packed lineup of thrill coasters and family rides, I went in with high expectations, but did it deliver? Before we go through the ride lineup, there is something rather cool and quirky about this park that I really enjoyed, and I really wish other parks would do the same thing. So when we went there, we had an open dated ticket. And what they do with the open dated tickets is they allow you in for a 2-hour preview the evening before you plan to visit. Now, you need to be careful about this one, because if you scan your ticket too early, even 1 minute too early, that will then count as your actual visit day and you won't be able to visit the following day. So in our case, the park was open till 9 PM and we had to wait till 7 PM to get in. And it was great because those last 2 hours, the park was reasonably quiet. We got a feel for the park, we got a number of rides out of the way, and then went back for a full day after that. So yeah, I think that is a fantastic introduction to the park, and I genuinely would love to see other parks do it. But let's go through those rides, shall we? Right, so one of the first coasters you see when you come into this park, and one that I took advantage of on that preview the night before, was Candymonium. Now, it's a B&M Hyper, and I seem to have been not too impressed with a lot of the B&M Hypers. Don't get me wrong, there are some that I do enjoy. Shambhala is up there for me, but there's a few that went on and I was just like, oh, that wasn't anything special. Candymonium, I had a lot of fun on. I went on it a handful of times. The one criticism, actually there's 3 criticisms about this one. First one is operations. That's a general statement of this park. Not their strong point, to be honest. They were a little bit slow. So it was running 3 trains when I was there, and it was stacking those 3 trains. I think part of the problem is that they've got seatbelts on this. I've never done a B&M Hyper that has seatbelts. Doesn't need them. I'm sure it's an insurance thing, but yeah, that doesn't help with operations. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is there's a trim brake that, if you're towards the front of the train, you kind of miss most of it. Like, you don't feel it as bad. If you're at the back of the train, it is very noticeable. And I'm sure it's there for a reason, but it doesn't feel like it's needed. I'm curious though, because I know there are rides like Magnum XL where the trim brakes activate later in the day when it hits a certain speed. So maybe if you get on this ride early in the day, the trim brake isn't active. It was on every time I experienced it. That said, it is still a fantastic coaster, and I'm going to start, as always, nice and strong, put this one in the keep pile. And so the next one I'm going to cover is their log flume, and this is a little bit of a quirky one because, so I use Coaster Count to track how many coasters I've been on, and this log flume was included. Now, there's a number of things on Coaster Count that are both questionable and optional. Like, there's some that are like, this doesn't officially count, but you can if you want. I think this is in that grey area because there is a small amount of airtime on this. There is this bit towards the end, you come flying down the drop, and then there's this little bunny hill. And it's brilliant because I said in the vlog, I've never been on a log flume that has airtime, and people came back and said, well, what about Chapas, etc. Fair point on Chapas, except it's got restraints, so there's a limit to how much airtime you get. This log flume is a proper traditional log flume where you just sit in the boat with no restraints of any description, so your jacksie does leave that seat, and it's a lot of fun. So the rest of it isn't overly impressive. There's not a huge amount of like drops and stuff, but that element itself makes it fantastic, and it's another one I'm going to keep. The park's got a couple of wooden coasters, and personally I'm not sure that this is their strength. So one of the ones that I went on the first night, the preview, was Comet. Small little wooden coaster. I really wasn't that impressed with it, to be honest. I don't think it was, for me, it felt a little bit rough, and again, wooden coasters have a bit of character to them, right? You do not expect glass smooth on a wooden coaster. Yes, there may be some modern examples of that, but typically you want a little bit of rattle in the train that adds to the character. So I'm not against that, but I just found it kind of uncomfortable for what it was. It's one of those ones, I know others in the group really liked it, so as with all of these, we all have different opinions on rides. Things I like, you may disagree with, things you like, I may disagree with, and that is totally fine. So for me, this one, I wouldn't get rid of it, but I'm going to put it in take it or leave it. As with all the parks that we visited, they had the typical shameless kiddie cred, and theirs is called Coco Cruiser. And I'm pretty sure it's the same Zebra kids coaster that we went on in numerous parks. It's the uncomfortable one. The one that I moan about in every video, that it doesn't accommodate the parent that goes on with the child. So if you're a child, no problem. You get on this easy. If you're an adult, it's not comfortable. It's very, very cramped and just not the best. So again, I've said this in other videos. Typically here in the UK, you're allowed to sit straddling across both seats. For some reason, all the parks we visited in the US enforced you to sit on one side, which just didn't make it that good. So listen, that said, it is a kids coaster. And again, I've said this in numerous videos, I do appreciate the kids coasters because it introduces the next generation. So whilst it's not for me personally, I will keep it because I think it helps that next generation. Right, so getting away from the coasters for a second, because this park has a reasonably good lineup of flat rides. And the first one I'm going to touch on is their Ferris wheel, which, well, what's called Ferris wheel. You know, and it's fairly standard in that respect. It's got the big Hersheypark logo on it. And there's some cracking views, absolutely stunning views from the top there. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's just a nice way to chill out. It was, you know, every park has a different way of handling Ferris wheels. Like Wallaby Holland, for example, you get one full rotation, but it's very stop-start because they'll move it, load a few, move it, load a few, and once you get back round, off you get. Others, they'll only load like opposite cars and then run it round 2 or 3 times, and the rest of the ride's empty. This one, I think, was somewhere in the middle. There was a few points that we stopped to load up, but we also got multiple laps. So yeah, listen, it was good. It was enjoyable, great views, and as I've always said, flat rides have a purpose, so I'm gonna keep this one too. Right, if you've watched the videos from my trip, and I will link to them at the end of this video, I went on a ridiculous number of B&M inverts, and they varied wildly from some that were alright to some that were really good, and some that were a little bit snug to fit on. This park has one known as Great Bear, and I think it was definitely one of the better versions, in my own opinion at least. It was comfortable to get on, there was no issues with kind of size and the restraints and stuff. It had the good old B&M roar, and it wasn't the kind of shaky trains that are starting to plague B&Ms these days. I found it really comfortable and really enjoyable. And you know, there's a few elements in there that I don't think I've seen, like when you come off the lift hill, there's like a helix sort of thing coming at the start. But generally very enjoyable, and I went on it a handful of times. So apart from the operations that I've mentioned already, I'm going to keep this one. Another fairly common ride was the Vekoma Boomerang. Again, we went on a few of these on the trip. Theirs is called Jolly Rancher Remix. And you know, the station's not overly this isn't the most themed park you're going to go to, which is fairly true of a lot of the parks we visited. It had a little bit. This had all the stuff around Jolly Ranchers, obviously. There's a tunnel after the kind of, is that Cobra Roll? Basically where you do the upside down piece from going from one side to the other. There's a tunnel there, and I'm sure people were saying that you were meant to get kind of the scent of different flavoured Jolly Ranchers. I didn't notice any. I'm pretty sure I said in the video all I could smell was BO, so I don't know if that effect wasn't operating, is no longer present, or just the other smells were stronger. In terms of the ride itself, it was alright. It wasn't the best Vekoma Boomerang I had been on. It was not the worst. I would probably go on it again. I know, again, in our group, Andy went on it just before me. He absolutely hated it. So, you know, again, we all have different opinions. Personally, I'm going to put this one somewhere in the middle, so I might go on it again. I wouldn't be fussed if it disappeared, so take it or leave it. Going back to those flat rides then, they had a number of towers. Now, there are 3 drop towers that I did not get to experience because they were not operating the day I was there. Bizarrely, there were staff attending them, but those staff didn't open the ride. I'm not sure quite why, not aware of there being any kind of weather conditions or that. And given that there are 3 of them, I can't imagine it's a maintenance issue, because surely all 3 of them wouldn't have been down together. So I can't speak to the drop towers, but there is another tower, their Kissing Tower, which is an observation tower. And obviously the kind of gondola that goes up is kind of shaped like a Hershey's Kiss, which I joked about because they look like animal droppings, but the ride itself was okay. Again, it's a beautiful park, right? It is a very picturesque park, and when you get up to the rides that are at that altitude and you can take it in, because a number of the coasters you can see that view, but you're kind of whizzing along at ridiculous speed and it just flashes past. Whereas the tower is a nice slow rotation around, you can see all the park, and I really enjoyed it. So, you know, as a way to chill out, it's definitely one that I would go on, so I'm going to keep it. Back at the coasters again, one of the rides that I was recommended to get on early in the day was Laff Trak. And the reason I was recommended to do that was because apparently it's notorious for not having the greatest throughput. And it was an okay ride, and because I didn't have to wait for it, I literally walked on. I was fine with it. I think if I had been stuck in that queue for, 40, 50, 60 minutes, I probably would have been let down, right? I mean, it's a mirror spinning coaster. So, I don't know, over here in the UK, think Spinball Whizzer or Dragon's Fury at Chessington, that kind of thing. In the dark, so it's inside an enclosed building, with lots of kind of UV sort of stuff going on. It was okay. It wasn't a bad ride. It wasn't an uncomfortable ride. As I say, if you are able to get on it reasonably quickly, it's fine. I mean, there is a little bit of sort of theming in the queue, like it's sort of like it's kind of got the hall of mirrors and stuff as you go in. Yeah, if you get on it with a short queue, fine. I think you would be disappointed if you waited for it. So it's not the worst thing, but I am going to put it in take it or leave it. One of the other coasters there though, I absolutely fell in love with. Thoroughly enjoyed this one, and that is Skyrush. Now this thing it's interesting. Now I believe that there's been some changes to the trains recently. Obviously I've only experienced it recently, therefore I don't know what the previous trains were like. They were very, very comfortable trains. It's interesting, right? So you get in this station and there's kind of like an airport theme loosely to it. Like the tannoy comes over and it's, now departing and all that kind of stuff. And then it's a really, really steep lift hill immediately out the station, straight up, and then you get absolutely yeeted over the top because that lift hill shoots you up at a decent pace, flying over the top, and then it is just relentless. It's so much fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did go on it though once, front row, and as I say, you're supposed to go zipping up this lift hill, and I'm sitting there and you start to see the chain, the catch car pull away, and the train moved a little bit, and then the catch car just went flying up the hill, and I'm like, we're still in the station. We're meant to be on that catch car. So that wasn't ideal, so they had to evac us and fortunately they gave us express pass, fast pass things. So we came back later in the day, got that front row ride, and it was amazing. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, definitely one that's going in that keep pile. So I mentioned earlier that they had a couple of wooden coasters, and I've obviously talked about Comet already. The other set of kind of racing coasters is Lightning Racer. Now I went on both sides of this one, and it's weird. I'd heard before I got there that the thrill coasters tend not to have much in the way of queues, and it's more the family attractions that have the queues. Certainly when we got to this ride, it was walk on, like they were sending empty trains just to keep the thing going, which was just crazy to see. So there was no issues with kind of timings to get on this, managed to get both sides done back to back. I was disappointed in it, if I'm honest. I just thought there was a number of places where it lost pace. I thought it was a little bit rough in areas. The guy I was sitting next to in our group didn't. He thought it was smooth and forceful and all that kind of stuff. So, again, we all kind of experienced them a little bit differently. He's a lot taller than me, so I'm the short arse, maybe just, related to that kind of body shape and size again. It wasn't the worst ride, right? It definitely wasn't the worst ride. The racing element's okay in it. It's not the best racing coaster I've been on. And I don't know, I mean, I'd probably go back on it and give it another shot. But yeah, that's another one. I'm putting in take it or leave it. There's a few transportation rides here. And one of those is their monorail, which we went on. It's a reasonable length monorail. Kind of goes around, I want to say it goes around more than just the park. Like it kind of leaves the park and goes around a few other areas and stuff. It wasn't the worst. I think the problem I had, again, if you've seen those videos, you'll know I was there during a kind of mini heatwave, and it was uncomfortable. The station is uncovered, which I criticised other parks for. I get that it's cheap to not have to build these things, but when you're in a country that either gets torrential rain or ridiculous heat, a little bit of coverage isn't the worst thing. So the station wasn't great. The ride itself, pretty relaxing, chilled out. Yeah, you get to see bits of the park, that's all cool and all that. I don't know, I've been on better transportation rides, so I'm gonna put this one also in that take it or leave it pile. Right, we're halfway through the list, and that means it's time for you to click that button. you know, well, either the thumbs up button if you're enjoying this, the thumbs down if you're not liking it, or the subscribe button if you've not done it yet. Right, there's a ride here that I missed. Now, I didn't get on everything. I got all the big hitters, and as always, skip all the kind of kiddie section. So maybe this was in that area because I don't remember seeing it. I'm starting to think my way around the park now. Anyway, they have a wave swinger, and I like a wave swinger. So I'm not going to count it towards, you know, the like, dislike, all that kind of thing. I suspect it would go and keep because I tend to like this attraction. But if you've been on it, let me know what you think. So one of the rides we went on, again, I mentioned the heat already, was Reese's Cupfusion, and we went on it because we were like, it's an indoor dark ride with AC, let's go. So we did, we went on this, and it was a kind of shooter ride as well. It was interesting because it was a little bit different, not unique in any shape or form, you'll find other examples of this, but like it was sort of batched, I think it's 3 trains connected, which I guess if you go on something like Wallace and Gromit here, there's the 2 cars connected that go around together, so that part definitely isn't unique. There was bits where it kind of undulated around the track, so it wasn't just a flat going around, like there was bits where it went up and down and stuff. And it was a lot of screen-based mixed with a few props. I'm pretty sure the guns on this were alright, like I've said this in other videos before. I don't mind a shooter ride as long as the targeting system is reasonably good and accurate. Some of them are either like tiny little pinholes that you can barely hit, or you have no clue if you hit it or the person sitting next to you. I want to say this was one of the better versions. This was also the one that was quite funny because, again, I mentioned the guy I was sitting next to on our trip, Johnny. He's 6 foot plus, right, big guy. And at the end, they take your photo. Well, he's so tall that instead of getting a photo of his face, they got a photo of his chest. So yeah, maybe not designed for tall people, but listen, it was good, I enjoyed it. It's a dark ride, it was AC, it's needed. I'd keep it. There's a ride here that kind of caught me off guard because, well, it's old and it's a manufacturer that's not renowned for being the smoothest thing. It's Sooperdooperlooper, or I think I called it Superduper Pooper Scooper, but it's the Schwarzkopf. A looper, obviously, including the name. You know, it was weird because, like, there's a sort of the chain lift hill starts in the station. I mean, it's flat in the station, going onto the lift hill, but basically you engage onto the chain inside the station, and then it pulls you. So you very, very, very slowly leave the station, and then go up this lift hill. And actually, it was really smooth. Like, I was genuinely gobsmacked at how smooth such an old coaster was. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely a lot of fun, you know, had the loop and all that kind of stuff, and interacts with a few other coasters on the way around. So yeah, this one, surprisingly, is going in that keep pile. And the next 2 coasters are kind of related, and I think I got them mixed up because there's 2 Intamin coasters here. Or maybe more actually, but the next 2 are Intamin coasters. And I'd heard they had an Intamin launch coaster, which we'll get to in a second, but I got it confused with this next ride, which is Fahrenheit, because I saw it and I looked at it and I went, oh, that's got a vertical lift hill. That's an interesting way of doing a launch. It turned out this wasn't a launch coaster, we'll cover that one next. But yeah, so Fahrenheit, we were lucky on this one because it had been closed for many, many days and we assumed we would just miss out on it. Again, you'll probably have seen in the series, a lot of the parks we went to had at least one coaster closed. Touchwood, when we went to Hersheypark, everything was open, which was amazing. So we did get on Fahrenheit, and it was interesting. I've never been a huge fan of vertical lift hills. I think it's a very visual element off ride. It's not the most comfortable thing on ride. Not a huge fan of it in Smiler, wasn't a huge fan of it in Rip Ride Rocket, or this, or Sop, like just all the examples. And actually, that's the other thing, is that in my head, I tend to associate that element with Gerstlauer, who, again, there are a couple of exceptions, but typically I'm not a huge fan of their work. I don't find it the most comfortable. So I kind of looked at this and went, Intamin, Gerstlauer, confusing. I did enjoy the ride. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, it kind of caught me off guard, and I'm going to put it in the keep pile. Right, so that brings us to the other Intamin coaster that I got mixed up with, which is actually their launch coaster, known as Storm Runner. Now, I did say there that I got on everything, all the big hitters. I almost didn't get on this because, so we got there and gets in the station, separate queue line for the front row because you obviously want front row on a launch coaster. So we did that, standing in the front row, and at this point it was running the dual station operations, right? So basically, as it says, they've got 2 stations and they use a switch track. So they shoot one off, load the next one, shoot that one off, load this side in, and so on and so forth. We gets there and then we realised that they were offloading the people that they just put on it. I thought that's a little bit weird. And then I turned to the other station and watched the train reverse back into the station. Which, you know, it's not meant to do. So it failed to launch. And so we stood in the station for a long time, persevering, because at this point I think it was the only credit we had left. We maybe had the mine train still to do. We'd basically done everything, and I really didn't want to miss this. So we sat there for a good 30 to 40 minutes, letting the engineers do whatever they were doing out on the track, fiddling around with it. And, you know, credit to the staff, you know, they were getting us cold water, which was definitely needed. And then we had to kind of leave. And I genuinely then thought I'd missed my opportunity because for quite some time that ride was not operating. And I think it was related to the heat. I think we've seen that with a few of the rides when we were over there, that they just struggle in certain temperatures, and it was hot. Fortunately, as the day went on and it cooled down again, the ride did come back and I got on it. Front row, absolutely loved it. That launch is punchy as hell, so much fun. And I'm definitely glad that I sort of put up with it and kind of got on it, because I'd have been gutted to have missed that. And I would say it is one of the best ones there. So I'm going to keep it. I mentioned that they had a couple of transportation rides, and I've obviously touched on the Monorail already. So the other one is their train ride. Now, again, if you've watched the channel long enough, you know I tend to like a train ride. Theirs is Gulch Railway. And it was okay. It wasn't anything spectacular, wasn't a huge amount to see. I mean, you did see some stuff obviously as you go around the rides. It's quite a big park and obviously it only covers a small portion of it, so yeah, listen, it's not the worst by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I've done train rides where literally all you can see is trees and you're like, what's the point in that? So you could see some stuff, so I will put it and take it or leave it, but yeah, for a guy that likes the train rides, this one just didn't deliver. I do have one more favour to ask of you. Right now, up until the 1st of September, voting is open for the UK Theme Park Awards. So if you haven't already voted, please do so. I've been nominated for Best Developing Content Creator, and it's a fairly tough category, so every vote counts. There are tons and tons of categories to vote in: Best Theme Park, Best Ride, Best Event, etc. So please vote in as many as you can, and skip the ones that maybe you don't have an opinion on. For everyone who has voted, thank you so much. Another ride that they had, which I did a few of these over in the US. So they had the Cars rides, the ones that you drive yourself. And again, I've said this in other videos, there's still a number of petrol-powered versions in the US. There may be some electric ones, we certainly didn't experience any, and the majority over here have converted to electric. Not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a fact. That's pretty much how they've all gone. So it was the typical, very noisy, very smelly petrol-powered car. Now, they've got 2 versions. Now, it's called their Twin Turnpike, and it's either the Twin Turnpike Speedway, where you're in the kind of sporty cars, or it's the Twin Turnpike Classic cars, where you're in the more vintage cars. I was in the latter, one of the vintage cars, and it was quite heavy on the old steering. It was a reasonable length though, it was pretty good. And yeah, listen, I don't know whether I want it to go electric. I'm sure at some point it will if it doesn't get removed, but I kind of enjoyed it, so I'm gonna keep it. This next one I forgot about. So I was going through the website getting a list of all the rides, and I saw this one and I thought, how did I miss this? That's a coaster, I missed it. It's the Wild Mouse, by the way. And then I went through coaster count, I was like, nope, tick the box. So I went back looking through the footage and I did get on this. But I also noticed that when I came off the ride, I didn't really say anything about it. I just went, all right, well that's that done, and moved on to the next ride. So yeah, guessing it wasn't the most memorable thing. Certainly not one to write home about, so take it or leave it. Well, so there's another flat ride here that I absolutely loved. It's a type of ride that I generally enjoy, and they have one of the larger, if not the largest, certainly up there in terms of size, It's their screaming swing known as Twizzlers Twisted Gravity, which I think is one of the newest, if not the newest ride they have in the park. So it is obviously the big giant screaming swings, and I really enjoyed it. The only thing that let me down the day I was there was, again, because of the temperature, I went on this thinking, oh, I'll get a nice breeze, go flying through the air. Yeah, no, I just got hit in the face by warm air, which wasn't the best. Nonetheless, it was pretty good. So one side faces out towards that log flume, and the direction I was facing was over the park. So, reasonably good views and a nice thrilling flat ride. So yeah, it's another one going in that keep pile. If you have watched the channel for a while, you will know that there is a specific manufacturer that typically is very common amongst enthusiasts, and for some reason I don't get it. And that's RMC. Now I know I'm not alone in this, because there's a few people I've spoke to who are like, yeah, I don't get the hype of RMCs either. I've done maybe 6 RMCs now. Gwazi I really enjoyed. Untamed, not fan. Twisted Timbers, not fan. Jersey Devil, not fan. There's another one I can't remember. And then this one here, Wildcats Revenge. I'm happy to say this one falls into that I really enjoyed this one. So there are definitely some RMCs that I like. I think I've said this before as well. For me, and again, this will 100% come down to your size and shape. I don't like the train designs of RMCs. I find them particularly uncomfortable. Others in the group did not. Some in the group agreed with me. So again, your mileage will vary, but I just don't think... The rides are aggressive, right, which is fantastic, and they're glass smooth. Like, they're just so smooth, RMCs. Because they're so aggressive, they're obviously pretty violently trying to throw you out of this train, and I understand the need to staple you in to a point, right? But when it becomes uncomfortable, this one wasn't like that. And I think, from what I've seen of the ones I've done, it seems to be the ejector airtime that gets me personally. So the rides that are just bonkers and flipping you and holding you upside down and, chucking you side to side, totally fine. The ones that are doing all the kind of bunny hills and just try to chuck you out the seat, those are the ones that I'm just rubbing up and down that restraint, and it's not comfortable for me. This one was fine. This I thoroughly enjoyed. The problem I had with this though, and it's a problem I have had with other RMCs, is their locker system. Now again, I get it, right? Because I've just said these are pretty violent and aggressive rides, they're obviously going to want to make sure you've not got anything loose that kind of comes off and hurts other people or damages the ride. I get that, and I appreciate a lot of people have said, people are dumb, right? There's a lot of people who are ignorant or just don't pay attention or think that doesn't apply to me, and they'll take their stuff, and I get it, right? So this kind of metal detector thing and all that kind of stuff. The two caveats I had with that was I had my shades on, and it might have been different if I'd had the strap on the back of them, but they wouldn't even let those on or in a pocket or anything. I'd put everything else in a locker. I had to leave the ride, go back, put stuff in the locker. So the first time was okay, right? Enjoyed the ride, happy days. Went back the second time, and I was like, this queue's just not moving, and the train's going round kind of mostly empty. This makes no sense. It turned out they had a problem with those lockers whereby the locker system thought there was no lockers left. Now I don't know how that's possible when the trains were empty and the station was empty, so either people had left stuff in there and thought, oh, I'll just come back and get it later, or the system hadn't registered they'd left, exited those lockers. So it's a frustrating system. I get the need for it, as I've said. I don't know, I just think there are some flaws in all the locker systems that I experienced in America. But the ride itself, I did thoroughly enjoy, and it's one of 2 RMCs that I've enjoyed. So that's going in that keep pile. There you go, that is almost double, if not double, the number of keeps as take it or leave it, and nothing in my scrap pile, which that doesn't often happen. So I thoroughly enjoyed this park. And if you haven't seen the video of me in that park, I'll chuck it up here. See you over there.